This is Bob Sansevier. I'm here, Vikings beat reporter Rick Alonzo and Pioneer Press deputy sports editor John Plume. Rick, did you, like me, watch that Super Bowl and say, Vikings knew how to count to 11? They would have won the Super Bowl, would have beaten the Colts too.
Absolutely. I mean, the Vikings really handled the Saints in all areas except turnovers and the 12th man penalty, obviously. But, I mean, you got to look at that. I'm sure the Vikings players were looking at that and saying, geez, I mean, if the Saints won this game, we could have won this game. I'm sure that's what they were thinking.
Now, John, the odds are out for the Super Bowl next year. Vikings are 12-1 odds to win. They're in a clump with like Philadelphia, and the Packers and the Cowboys. The Colts are favored at 6-1, and you got the Saints are in there like 8-1 with another. I think maybe with the Patriots. Do you think that this team has a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl without Brett Favre?
No. They can't win it without Brett Favre.
Are they a playoff team without Brett Favre?
They're a playoff team without Brett Favre, but they can't win it without him. Let's face it, if Brett Favre doesn't come back, they're a 9-10 win team. They're going to be like they were 2 years ago. They'll get in the playoffs. A team will come after them. If it's Tavares, they'll sage, they'll blitz. They won't be able to handle it. 2 or 3 interceptions later, they're out of the playoffs. It's just that simple. You can't play in this league. You can't compete for a Super Bowl in the NFL unless you have a quarterback who's smart enough, who can handle a blitz, make decisions in a split second of time, and they don't have that without Brett Favre.
Now, Rick, they have other needs, and it would seem like DB, there'd be some decent defensive backs when they pick, but there'll also be some decent quarterbacks available when they pick. I mean, Tim Tebow could be there. You could have Colt McCoy there. There's several quarterbacks who could be there. Would they look at a quarterback whether or not they know if Favre's coming back?
Well, I mean, it's a position they have to address at some point for the future because, it is a position of need. But a guy like Colt McCoy is not going to get you to the playoffs this year. He's not going to be a starter for this type of team that they have. They'd be better off just going with Tavares or Sage, no doubt about that, rather than trying to plug a rookie in like that.
But here's a rookie for you, Tebow to Harvin. Does that tantalize you at all? I know it does, John.
I don't see Tebow as an NFL quarterback, long term. Maybe a wildcat type guy or something like that, but not an every down quarterback.
You disagree with him, don't you? You're a big Tebow guy.
He has great intangibles. I mean, he can throw the ball down the field.
He can win. That's the best intangible of all.
Bud Grant used to say he was never concerned about the 4.4s and the prototype size or any of that stuff. It was all about winning and it was all about durability. And again, this team hasn't been to a Super Bowl in 33 years, so there's a lot to be said for, how Bud evaluated talent. But Tim Tebow, 6'3", 245, 4.5 40, can bench 400 pounds.
Tackle his mom.
Yeah, he can do it in the commercial. He can do all of those things, and the guy just knows how to win. But he would be probably a 2-year project on a practice squad, although he would sell a lot of tickets here in this market, especially if you put him in a Wildcat with Percy Harvin and Adrian Peterson. That would be interesting.
Well, I mean, there are quarterbacks. It's rare, but there are rookies who can get something done. Mark Sanchez did a passable and decent enough job with the Jets to get them to a championship game. So I don't think it's beyond the realm. But I do think, John, what I'm hearing you say is Tim Tebow will lead the Vikings to the Super Bowl in 2 years. Is that what you said?
No, that's not what I said.
I didn't think so. Well, Rick, this offseason, will it be busy for them? You seem to have the impression, I think, that they'll come back pretty much intact.
Well, yeah, because of the Final 8 plan, the so-called Final 8 plan where, the final 8 teams remaining in the playoffs don't have a lot of, they're restricted in what they can do in free agency, so there's not a lot of freedom there for them. They're further restricted because they made it to the Final 4. So, I think this is essentially the same team. Granted, when I say that, you'll see a ton of turnover in the bottom third of the roster, a lot of young guys, those things. That's...
What about Chester Taylor?
I think they would definitely like to keep him, but I guess it depends on how bad Chester wants to start because he's not going to get that opportunity here.
They could franchise him.
You could, but you know what? If you do lose him, if I were the Vikings, I would start thinking about using Percy Harvin the way Reggie Bush is used.
Yeah, and I think we saw a little bit of that at the end of the season. But I think this will be a really good draft for the Vikings. This is a defense deep draft. A couple guys to keep an eye on are Patrick Robinson, the cornerback from Florida State. He should be there in the bottom of the draft. Dan Williams, defensive tackle from Tennessee, 6'2", 330 pounds, big-time player, great against the run. And Mark Beluga, a 6'3", 320-pound guard from Iowa, I'd like to see him take over for Anthony Herrera. Who knows if those guys will be there, but those are 3 players to keep an eye on.
He lose for this draft talk. You can just tell. Bob Sansevier with Rick Alonzo and Draftnik John Plume.